Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to the 6th lecture in the Renaissance Literature program. My name is Dr. Fouzi Slisli and I'll be your guide through this lecture. Our topic today is a sonnet by the famous sonneteer, English sonneteer, John Milton. It's a poem that has received a lot of attention and is very famous and very delicate. It's called On His Blindness, and it's a poem in which Milton talks about becoming blind. He became blind towards the middle of his life, and the poem illustrates the creativity of Renaissance literature and Renaissance poetry in terms of its style, in terms of its ideas, in terms of its themes, in terms of the structure of its poetry, and in terms of its general creativity of thought. So let me first give you a little bit of background on John Milton and the poem. The background of the poem is that Milton lost his eyesight. He became blind in 1644. The middle of the 17th century. By 1652, he became totally blind. And strangely enough, he wrote his greatest work, Paradise Lost. It's a long, epic poem. He wrote his Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained after he became blind. So his most creative period came after his blindness, and he was blind towards the middle of his life, around the age of 40. Many scholars rank Milton as second only to Shakespeare, one of the greatest English poets to have ever lived. On His Blindness is a sonnet, as I said. As far as the meter is concerned, all the lines in the poem, and remember we talked about the meter in the previous lecture, we talked about the sonnet form in the previous lecture. Remember that we said there is two forms, the Petrarchan, which comes from Italy and became famous across Europe, and that it has two sections. The first section has 8 lines and it poses a problem, and the second section has 6 lines and it solves the problem or provides a creative solution to the problem. The English sonnet is slightly different. It has 4 parts. It has 3 parts that have 4 lines, and then the 4th part has 2 lines. And again, it poses a problem and provides a creative solution to it. They're usually poems about love or about personal, emotional issues. Milton's poem On His Blindness is a Petrarchan poem. So it's written in the Italian tradition, not in the Shakespearean tradition. As far as the meter is concerned, all the lines in the poem are in the iambic pentameter. In this metric pattern, a line has 5 pairs of unstressed and stressed syllables. The total of the syllables in every line is 10 syllables. The first 2 lines of the poem can illustrate this point to us. The first 2 lines of the poem say, "When I consider how my life is spent, ere half my days in this dark world and wide." As you can see, there is 5 syllables in the first line and 5 syllables in the second line, a total of 10 syllables. The question of stress and unstress, the sonnet has a meter that begins with unstressed syllable and a stressed syllable, an unstressed and a stressed syllable. And scholars say that this follows the rhythm of the heart, du-dum, 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 du-dum. So when you read the poem, it feels something like that. When I consider how my life is spent, ere half my days in this dark world and wide. On his blindness is, as I say, the Petrarchan poem. It's a lyric poem with 14 lines. This type of poet, this type of poem, this type of sonnet was popularized by the Italian priest poet Petrarch, who lived between 1304 and 1374. It has a rhythm scheme of A-B-B-A, A-B-B-A, C-D-E, C-D-E. And you can go back to the rhythms that I provided for you in the previous lecture to make sense of that if it doesn't make sense. These are essentially the rhymes that the first line rhymes with the fourth and the second rhyme rhymes with the third. The same thing for the next four lines. The 8th, 9th, and 10th line have a C-D-E rhyme scheme, and they rhyme with the last three lines that also have a C-D-E rhyme scheme. Milton wrote the poem in 1655. As this sonnet has a simple diction. It's an enjambment, what is called an enjambment. It means that it's not an end, it doesn't have an end stop. It doesn't stop on the end, but the line goes into the other line. There isn't a stop between the lines. It's called enjambment. Milton has used his extensive knowledge of the Bible to create a deeply personal poem and gently guide himself and the reader or listener from an intense loss, the loss of his sight. It's from an intense loss. He guides you to understanding and to gain what he gains from this terrible experience. And what helps him in this process of contemplating his loss and telling you, the reader, about it, and then finding the gain in it, is his belief in God and his knowledge of the Bible. The main themes of this poem are Milton's exploration of his feeling of fear, limitation, light and darkness, duty and doubt regarding his failed sight, his rationalization of this anxiety by seeking solutions in his faith. So the solution that he tries to find for this loss, he finds it in his faith. John Milton was an English poet with controversial opinions, and his involvement in politics is very famous and well known. One of his most read poems, among others, is Paradise Lost. He became completely blind in 1651, but that didn't affect his writing. In this poem about his blindness, he says, "When I consider how my light is spent, ere half my days in this dark world and white, and that one talent which is death to hide, lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent." Basically what he says here, he describes how he is living his life in a wide world which is now dark. All of a sudden this huge big world is dark to him, like a grave, because of the loss of his sight, of course, which he refers to as his light. It's like somebody switched the lights off on him. His light is spent. That's what he says. He says, my light is spent. When I consider how my light is spent, ere half my days in this dark world and wide, and that one talent, which is death to hide, lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent. So he cannot, what he means is that he cannot even contemplate, he cannot even use the one way that's left to him, his only talent left. He says he only has one talent left, and that's to kill himself, to commit suicide. But even that, he's incapable of doing it. Though his soul, he says, is bent towards the idea. His soul is contemplating ending his life. But even that, he says, he is incapable of doing it. And he says, therefore, this talent that he has remains useless. It's a useless talent that remains within him, which he will never use. He refers to death with sarcasm as a talent, his ability to kill himself. He said, that's all I can do with myself is kill myself. That's the only talent that I have left. Something that is not normally done socially. Nobody associates the capability of, ending one's life as a talent. And this reflects his own way of being angry or hurt, because Milton enjoyed writing, and his blindness must have presented him with a lot of difficulty in, writing and reading. Somebody who enjoys spending extensive hours of time among books and in writing, and all of a sudden he cannot do that. And it was his faith that kept him strong and deterred, restrained him from taking his own life. The strength of his life, of his faith, is shown in the next lines of the sonnet, when he says, to serve therewith my Maker and present my true account, lest he return in chide, doth God exact day labor lie denied, I fondly ask, but patience to prevent. What he says basically is that he will serve his Creator no matter how he is suffering, no matter how incapable he is. He will continue to serve his Creator, as he will have to present to him a true account of his life. He says, one day I will have to present to my Maker a true account, and I have to tell my Maker, my Creator, how I spent my life. He will do this in case he is chided, in case he is spoken to angrily when he returns to God and is asked if he carried on with his day-to-day life even without his eyesight. When God asks him, did you carry on with your day-to-day life even without your eyesight? He says he worries that he won't be able to say, yes, I did. I continued trying to find ways to serve my God, to serve my Creator, even without my eyesight. That murmur soon replies, God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts, who best bear his mild yoke, they serve him best. His state is kingly, thousands at his bidding speed, and post over land and ocean without rest, they also serve who only stand and wait. And he answers in the final lines of the poem, he answers his own question that he posed in the beginning of the poem by saying that God will not need either man's work or his own gift, that God doesn't need you. God is in no need of you or your gifts, meaning that God has no need for gifts from man. He is served by thousands of angels who are at his beck, who are ready to carry out his wish. Post over land and ocean without rest. These thousands of angels are posted over land and ocean without rest. They never rest to act God's orders, to enact God's orders. He also adds that the angels will serve those who are patient and wait through all sorts of problems that they face. Milton's faith in God, in that sense, seems to give him the courage to face his life despite his blindness. Although he is blind and life seems unbearable, he finds in his faith in God the courage and the strength to carry on with his life. It is this faith that seems to give him courage and patience to cope, and also gives him the hope that salvation lies for those who wait in patience. Allusion, as far as like the technicalities of the play, of the poem, in line 3 to 6, there is allusions of Milton alludes to the parable of the talents in chapter 25 of the Gospel Matthew, verses 14 to 30. There's allusions to verses of the Bible. In line 7, the speaker, in his attempt to blame somebody, is about to ask a rhetorical question about God's justice before patience interrupts him. In line 8, we have a personification. Patience is personified. Patience comes to give him an advice, as if patience was a person coming to give him an advice. So this is a technique called personification. In line 11, we have a metaphor. The humans are submitted to God. The yoke is the symbol. The yoke, or the chains, the yoke in somebody's, the yoke is the symbol that brings together the humans and the animals. The word wait implies a pan, in the sense that he will wait until the end of his life. And this basically is the general background and some explanations of the technicalities of the meter, of the techniques used in On His Blindness, the background of the play, the story, the complications that the poem, that the sonnet presents, and the type of solutions that are offered. As you can see, the poem makes very intelligent allusions to other texts, to biblical passages and that are known in English society. And a solution is presented in the end, in the sense that Milton, through his God, through his faith in God, finds solace. He finds courage. He finds strength to carry on with his life and to serve God, just as he did before. So to end, I will simply give you a final read of the poem On His Blindness by John Milton. When I consider how my light is spent, ere half my days in this dark world and white, and that one talent which is death to hide, lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent, to serve therewith my Maker and present my true account, lest he return in chide. Doth God exact day labor light denied? I fondly ask, but patience to prevent that murmur soon replies, God doth not need either man's work or his own gift. Who best bear his mild oak, they serve him best. His state is kingly, thousands at his bidding speed, and post over land and ocean without rest, they also serve who only stand and wait. Thank you so much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa ta'ala wa barakatuh, and I'll meet you in our next lecture, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.